Working in a morgue requires more than just technical expertise. It demands courage and resilience. It involves confronting the profound silence of those who have passed away day after day. Or at least that's what we prefer to think. In this video, you'll hear 4 untold stories from forensic professionals. Experiences that challenge reason, science, and the line between the living and the dead. Before we dive in, I'd appreciate your support. Please subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming videos. Give this video a like and share your profession in the comments. We want to uncover the most chilling stories from your field. Now, take a deep breath and prepare to uncover what unfolds when death refuses to remain silent. My name is Emily, and for the past 6 years, I've been working in a morgue in Ohio. Most days, I managed to handle the weight of my job, but there was a night in 2022 that changed everything for me. Since that incident, my perspective on work and death has shifted dramatically. It was an especially tough week, as there had been a major accident on the interstate, and the bodies kept arriving. The atmosphere in the building was thick with tension, fueled both by the volume of work and the visible grief that families brought with them to claim their loved ones. That afternoon, I was tasked with preparing a body for the family. He was a young man around 30 years old who had died in a car crash. His injuries were extensive, yet his face surprisingly remained intact, wearing a peaceful expression, as if he were merely asleep. Something about his appearance unsettled me, but I couldn't quite identify what it was. I moved him to the preparation room, turned on the lights, gathered the necessary instruments, and began my usual process. Cleaning, arranging, and ensuring everything was in proper condition so his family could say their final goodbyes with dignity. It was a mechanical routine, a series of motions I had repeated countless times before. However, while I worked, something peculiar caught my eye. At first, it seemed like an optical illusion caused by the lighting, but it wasn't. I noticed tears on his cheeks. I stood still for a few moments, trying to comprehend what I was witnessing. I approached the body and attempted to wipe the tears away with a cloth, thinking it might be residue from the procedure. But as I brushed them away, the tears continued to trickle down slowly, as though they were still coming from his closed eyes. There was no logical explanation for this. The dead don't cry. That's a fact, an undeniable truth. Yet here it was, challenging everything I understood. The room felt heavier, and a sense of oppression enveloped the space, as if something unseen had entered with me. I set the cloth aside and took a step back, watching the tears flow more intensely down the pale cheeks of the man. Just then, the phone in the room rang, its sharp tone breaking the silence. That phone never rings. It's a room designated for working with bodies, not for phone calls. I approached the device, hesitating before answering, but there was no one on the other line. Just an unsettling silence, as if someone were there but unwilling to speak. I quickly hung up, my mind racing to make sense of what was happening. I turned back to the body, hoping the tears had stopped, but they hadn't. They kept flowing, and now they appeared even more pronounced, as if the man was crying harder. I felt utterly lost. Every part of me sensed that something was deeply wrong, something beyond the realm of our understanding. I tried to rationalize it. Perhaps it was a chemical reaction or some unusual response in the tissues I hadn't encountered before. But that explanation didn't feel convincing, even to me. As I continued to observe, a detail I hadn't noticed before grabbed my attention. On the side of his neck, there was a small mark, almost undetectable. It looked like a letter, as if someone had etched an initial into his skin. I leaned in closer for a better look and realized it was an M. I had no idea what it signified. It wasn't mentioned in his file or any related documents. It was a detail that didn't belong. Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered. It was just a moment, but it made my heart race. I glanced up, hoping it was merely an electrical glitch. However, when I turned back to the body, I noticed something had shifted. The man's expression was no longer serene. His face seemed slightly strained, as if he were trying to communicate something. His lips, which had been shut moments ago, were now slightly ajar, revealing his teeth. My first instinct was to flee the room, but a part of me, the part that had learned to confront the toughest situations, compelled me to remain. I approached the body once more, this time with more caution, and observed something peculiar about the way his hands were positioned. Previously, they had been relaxed at his sides, but now they rested on his abdomen, as though he had purposefully placed them there. I double-checked the file to verify how he had been admitted. His hands should have been at his sides. No one had moved them. The temperature in the room began to drop noticeably. I could see my breath forming small clouds of vapor in front of me. Despite the chill, the man's body seemed surprisingly warm, almost as if it were still alive. I decided to complete the procedure as swiftly as possible. I covered his face with a cloth, arranged the final details, and got ready to exit the room. Just before leaving, a compelling urge pressed me to take one last look. It was an impulse I couldn't dismiss, as if something was beckoning me to do it. I gently lifted the cloth and saw that the tears had stopped. Yet, in their place was something even more unsettling. His lips, which had been slightly parted before, now curled into a faint smile. It wasn't a peaceful smile. It was something more enigmatic, something that seemed to hold a meaning I couldn't grasp. I exited the room, forcefully shutting the door behind me. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake off what had happened. I discreetly inquired with my colleagues if they had any further details about the man, but no one could provide additional information. His family claimed him the very next day, and the body was released without issue. But deep down, I understood that what had occurred in that room was far from normal. I realized I had witnessed something unexplainable. Since that day, I can't go into that room without experiencing a tightness in my chest. Each time I walk by, it feels like something is watching me, something that remains trapped in that space, waiting for acknowledgement. And on the quietest nights, when the morgue is entirely empty, I sometimes think I hear a phone ringing in the distance, even though I know there's no one there to answer it. I'm Daniel, and I've been a forensic nurse in Los Angeles for over 2 decades. Contrary to what many might believe, dealing with death daily hasn't completely hardened me. There are still moments that haunt me, memories that cling to me and refuse to fade away, often returning in vivid flashes when I close my eyes. One particular incident from 1999 is one I'd rather forget. It began like any other year, with the medical examiner's office where I worked operating in a relatively calm area, away from the city's chaos. Days would go by with little change, a routine filled with paperwork and bodies coming in and out. However, everything shifted with one specific case. One afternoon, a vehicle arrived carrying a body that immediately drew everyone's attention. It was a young woman, no older than 25, dressed in a wedding gown. She had tragically died in a car accident en route to her wedding. According to the investigating officer, her white dress, now stained crimson, created a haunting scene. The veil hung precariously over her still face. Although I had encountered tragedies before, there was something uniquely unsettling about this incident that I couldn't quite place. It held my gaze in a way I couldn't explain. The body was taken to the autopsy room while the necessary paperwork was being completed. News of the accident spread through local media, and soon it was all anyone was discussing. The bride who never made it to her wedding day, headlines screamed. Her family arrived quickly, but their cries didn't fill the strange void that seemed to settle over the building upon her arrival. That evening, it was my turn for the night shift. While this was common for me, the thought of being alone with the woman's body filled me with an unusual sense of dread. I attempted to keep busy with my tasks, filing reports, checking supplies, and organizing medical equipment, but the atmosphere felt distinctly off. It was less about the typical sounds around me and more about a constant sense of being observed, as if unseen eyes were scrutinizing my every move. After wrapping up my filing, I decided to do one last check of the hallways to ensure everything was in order. The fluorescent lights flickered sporadically, which wasn't out of the ordinary in such a place. As I walked past the room containing the woman's body, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. I froze. I distinctly remembered closing it. It's a fundamental guideline. Doors should always be closed for security and respect. Cautiously, I nudged the door open. The body remained in the exact position, covered by a white sheet, but something was off. The veil that had earlier draped over her face was now hanging off the edge of the metal table. I didn't dwell on it much. I simply repositioned the veil and closed the door, ensuring it shut properly this time. Still, the chill in the air lingered. Back in my office, I attempted to reason with myself. Logically, someone else must have altered the veil before leaving, and I hadn't noticed it. Yet, as hours passed, the image of the bride seared itself into my mind. Her rigid expression, the unsettling tranquility, almost as if she were anticipating something. I tried to convince myself that fatigue and the solitude of the night shift were playing tricks on me. As the clock ticked toward midnight, an inexplicable event occurred. While I was reviewing some documents at my desk, something in the window caught my eye. Though it was closed, I could see my reflection illuminated by the soft glow of my desk lamp that as I turned to leave, I caught sight of a silhouette behind me. It was just a faint outline, enough to make me spin around sharply toward the door. Finding it empty sent a chill down my spine. I stood up quickly and stepped into the corridor, my heart racing. I glanced in both directions, hoping to see a colleague who had returned for something, but the hallway was deserted. The long, narrow passage was dimly lit by sporadic lights. With a knot in my stomach, I made my way to the examination room. The door remained shut, but something held me back before I reached for the handle. A soft noise drifted from within, resembling the creaking of metal, as if someone was shifting the table. I opened the door cautiously and froze. The body lay undisturbed, but this time the shroud had slipped to the floor. The atmosphere in the room felt surreal, as though time had halted. A heavy pressure filled my chest that I couldn't shake off. Yet, I moved forward to retrieve the shroud and drape it back over her. That's when I noticed something unsettling. The edges of the sheet covering her body were slightly crumpled, as if something beneath had stirred. Instinctively, I recoiled, retreating from the room and slamming the door behind me. I knew I should report what I witnessed, but my fear was paralyzing. How could I explain an experience I couldn't fully comprehend? I chose to return to my office, desperately trying to distract myself. However, the rest of the night felt unbearable. Every noise and shadow seemed to summon the presence of the woman. When my shift finally ended and my replacement arrived, I kept silent. I simply gathered my belongings and walked out. Yet, the events of that night were far from over. In the days that followed, my fellow workers began sharing tales of eerie occurrences. Some claimed to have seen a figure clad in white wandering the corridors. Others recounted instances of doors creaking open on their own and lights flickering out for no apparent reason. The stories were always connected to the examination room where the bride's body had been laid. Eventually, the body was released to her family and taken away for her final farewell. I thought that would spell the end of the strange happenings. However, even after she left, the medical examiner's office felt different. The hallways lingered with an unusual energy, as if a part of her spirit was ensnared there. Years have gone by since that time, but I still try to avoid night shifts whenever possible. And when I can't, I ensure to avert my gaze from the examination room, because deep down, I know she's still lingering, waiting. Working in a morgue isn't suited for everyone. It's not merely death we confront, but the weight of everything that accompanies it. The stories left untold, the questions that remain unanswered, and the haunting feeling that some of those who arrive still have something to convey. I'll keep my identity confidential. In 2015, while in California, I was tasked with performing an autopsy on a serial killer who had committed suicide while incarcerated. I never thought this case would initiate a personal nightmare, a torment that has shadowed every facet of my life since then. The morning unfolded under a gray, hazy sky, as if the city itself was aware of the tragedy concealed in its depths. I made my way to the forensic center, mentally braced to confront the routine of death, convinced that nothing could disrupt the unyielding logic of science. However, nothing in my prior experiences could have prepared me for what fate had in store for me that day. The body arrived from the prison in an inconspicuous van, accompanied by silent, serious guards. The news of the suicide had elicited little reaction from the media, as if the brutal nature of his crimes and his untimely demise had faded into a void of indifference. Still, I recognized that each statistic and report concealed a narrative of violence and suffering. With the body positioned on the autopsy table, I studied his features. A peculiar grimace was etched on his lifeless lips, an expression that seemed to challenge the very essence of death. As I prepared to commence the examination, the ambience in the room grew unusually heavy. The artificial lights flickered gently, casting shadows that merged with the darkness of my swirling thoughts. I opened the killer's skull, expecting to find only remains of a past marked by brutality. With my usual precision, it was at that exact moment that I felt an unwelcome presence behind me, an unsettling chill creeping down my neck. I halted my work momentarily and turned my head. There was no one present, only the reflection of the operating theater in the stainless steel instruments that appeared to be silent witnesses to my bewilderment. Amid that metallic gleam, I discerned the image of eyes fixed intently on me. They were neither mine nor those of any colleague. It was the face of the killer, captured in a grimace that defied the stillness of death. The unimaginable occurred. The cadaver, or rather its reflection, formed a smile. It was a signal that immobilized me, a blend of disbelief and terror that took root within me. The event, both fleeting yet overwhelming, remained etched in my mind. The vision of the killer smiling amidst my surgical tools was impossible to dismiss. It became a lasting impression that overshadowed every analysis and observation. During the following hours, as I concluded the autopsy, with my mind wrapped in a whirlwind of questions, each cut and each measurement echoed that inexplicable vision. As time passed, the experience morphed into an obsession that infiltrated each moment of my solitude. Every time I stepped into the morgue, my eyes instinctively sought out the reflection that had changed my perception of reality. The dread of facing that image again blended with a peculiar allure, as if within that smile lay a message, a warning that reason could not decode. For weeks, I refrained from discussing the incident with my coworkers, knowing that sharing it might make me seem unhinged, despite the fact that my mind was completely consumed by the memory of those unblinking eyes and that challenging grin. During my breaks, the image replayed endlessly in my thoughts. Sleeping grew difficult, as each night, when I closed my eyes, I relived the scene in the frigid autopsy room. The peace I once derived from the precision of my work had vanished, replaced by an ongoing sense of vigilance. The forensic tasks that used to serve as a haven of reason and facts had morphed into a backdrop of unresolved dilemmas. My training and expertise, grounded in evidence and scientific methodology, clashed with a reality that defied explanations rooted in physics or biology. Could it be that death preserved remnants of life in the form of an unseen presence? Or was it possible that my mind, weary from stress and trauma, was projecting images that had never existed? These inquiries intertwined within my thoughts, leading to endless nights of sleeplessness and days filled with unease. I attempted to get back to my routine, hoping to find solace in normalcy to banish that irrational dread. However, each new case I handled was overshadowed by the memory of that event, as if everything carried a silent reminder of the murderer who, in a final audacious act, had left his imprint on my conscience. In my quest for answers, I resorted to reviewing files and past forensic research. I examined cases involving inexplicable occurrences, reports where perception blurred into reality. Yet, no rational explanation fit what I had witnessed that fateful morning. The cold, objective facts could not capture the eerie smile that had manifested before me. Science seemed inadequate against an experience that, by its very nature, transcended the limits of human understanding. As time passed, my discomfort remained. In fact, each day at the morgue felt like a repetition of the past. I traversed the hallways of the forensic center with a mind ensnared in a cycle of images and sensations. The fluorescent lights, shadows cast on the walls, and the constant hum of medical machinery created an atmosphere that now felt foreign to me. The feeling of being observed grew stronger, and I imagined catching glimpses of those unblinking eyes in every nook, no matter how trivial. As the weeks went by, the lines between my job and personal life began to blur. The killer's presence invaded my mind, pulling me into a state of unrelenting anxiety. My dreams became a battleground where I replayed the autopsy with striking clarity, feeling the chill of the tools and the palpable tension in the air. The killer's grin haunted my sleepless nights, serving as a reminder that something within me had shifted irrevocably. Doubts crept in, leading me to question whether I had experienced a hallucination or truly encountered something beyond reality. Extravagant theories sprawled in my thoughts. Could it be that the human mind, when pushed to extremes, creates perceptions that go beyond mere brain function? Or was it conceivable that, in some inexplicable twist of fate, the line between life and death had blurred enough to permit a brief interaction with those who had passed? Despite my attempts to find clarity in academic literature, none of the explanations wholly resonated with my experience. The Forensic Center, once a bastion of order, now concealed secrets in every shadow, filled with a tangible tension. My colleagues, unaware of the depth of my struggles, noticed the change in me. My sleepless nights, the worry etched on my face, and a gaze heavy with unease attesting to my internal battle. Each time I entered the autopsy room, the sensation of being watched grew stronger, and every reflective surface seemed to capture the killer's unwavering image. As time marched on, I found no relief. With each autopsy and body examined, the killer's presence persisted, turning his smile into a poignant reminder that no matter how thorough my work, death still held mysteries that eluded rational understanding. Uncertainty took root in my life, transforming the initial fear into a constant companion that slowly chipped away at my confidence in what I once deemed undeniable. Eventually, I realized that I had to confront my fears, not to find a clear answer but to learn to exist alongside uncertainty. This experience compelled me to rethink my relationship with death, acknowledging that reality can sometimes be so intricate that it mocks our most basic explanations. Even with the strengths of science and reason, there are phenomena cloaked in an impenetrable veil of mystery. Now, each time I walk into the Forensic Center, a blend of responsibility and apprehension washes over me. The killer's unsettling smile lingers in my thoughts, a perpetual reminder that even with career advancements or case resolutions, that experience in Boston serves as a stark reminder of the secrets death holds. My life has become a continual acknowledgement that terror doesn't always unveil itself in grand or supernatural forms. Sometimes, it resides in the mundane, in the sterile light of an operating room, and in the stark reflections of a violent past. The autopsy of the serial killer left its mark on me, an invisible scar that I carry daily. Despite my efforts to move past that day, the essence of that monstrous individual refuses to fade away. Each fresh investigation and every encounter with death rekindle the sensation that something unsettling continues to lurk at the fringes of the known. Thus, in this ceaseless conflict between scientific certainty and the enigma of mystery, I've learned to coexist with my fear. The experience has shown me that there are times when life and death intertwine in ways that cannot be constrained by technical or rational definitions. The autopsy of that killer remains a constant reminder that the boundaries of our understanding can be challenged by realities that, while seemingly unlikely, manifest with unsettling clarity. Every step I take within the Forensic Center echoes the events of that day, a quiet reminder of a truth that refuses to be forgotten. The image of the killer, reflected in the gleam of my tools, serves as an alarm that in the shadowed realm of death, the divide between the real and the inexplicable is more fragile than we can fathom. Though my name may remain unknown, the narrative of that autopsy and the enduring presence of that figure have woven themselves into my life, an indelible memory that I will never erase. I choose to remain anonymous. My time at the New York Morgue had always followed a mechanical routine until I stumbled upon something that reshaped my understanding of death. Each morning as I began my forensic duties, I felt an unsettling realization that the corpses, meticulously arranged the night before, were found in entirely different positions. Initially, I assumed it was some macabre prank from a colleague, but the evidence quickly undermined that theory. I vividly recall the first time the situation took a bizarre turn. The autopsy room, usually bathed in a harsh white light, was disrupted by an astonishing change in the positioning of a body. One cadaver, which had been carefully placed on its side, was discovered the following day lying on its back, arms extended in an illogical manner. This arrangement didn't seem random, and an undeniable feeling that something inexplicable was lurking in the shadows consumed me. As the days passed, this anomaly continued to occur. Each morning, making my way down the morgue's corridor, I faced the same unsettling sight. The bodies were not where we had left them. Some were positioned upside down, others showing limbs arranged in angles that implied some unseen force at work. At first, we attempted to rationalize it as a glitch in our processes or perhaps a misremembering by the night staff. However, the consistency of the phenomenon compelled us to ponder whether these occurrences were purely human actions or if something deeper and more mysterious was at play. I decided to set up a camera in one of the autopsy rooms, convinced that capturing visual proof was the only path to understanding what was unfolding. That same night, as the room settled into the familiar calm before dawn, the camera recorded without interruption. My hope was that the footage would reveal something logically understandable. Yet, deep down, I felt a growing suspicion that death in this morgue had taken on an unsettling new nature. When dawn arrived, the footage I reviewed would forever alter my perception of the world. I was immobilized by what I saw. In a brief moment of darkness during the night shift, one of the cadavers on the autopsy table moved slowly and deliberately, turning until it was positioned oppositely from where it had been placed. The movement was neither frantic nor chaotic but intentional, as if an invisible force had taken care to reposition the deceased. The recording showed no signs of human involvement or hands, and the clarity of the image left no room for doubt about what I witnessed. The realization in that instant was beyond words. The sight of a body moving of its own accord, with no visible external influence, forced me to reevaluate all my past assumptions. For years, I had thought of death as a definitive end, a state where everything was fixed and unchanging. However, I was now compelled to consider that there might be forces at work that exceeded logic and scientific understanding. The camera, which I had hoped would debunk an internal joke, became undeniable evidence of a phenomenon that defied rational explanation. This footage quickly circulated among the staff at the Institute. Despite a reluctance to confront the inexplicable, no one could dispute the validity of the evidence. Yet, rather than pursuing a thorough investigation, the collective response was one of fear and mistrust. The notion of digging deeper into something so unsettling appeared to open a door to knowledge that none of us was ready to confront. With no logical answers, we chose to sidestep any further inquiry, filing the case as an unresolved incident, an anomaly we preferred to disregard. Weeks passed, and the atmosphere in the morgue grew increasingly oppressive. Night shifts became laden with palpable tension. Each of us teetered on the brink of disbelief and fear, uncertain of when the anomaly might reemerge. The image of the rearranged bodies lodged itself in my mind relentlessly, like a lingering question that would not dissipate. Every corner of the morgue seemed infused with an invisible presence, reminding us that something lay beyond our grasp. Both my curiosity and professional duty were deeply impacted by the fear now permeating the environment. As a forensic physician, my life had revolved around tangible evidence and the belief that every case could be elucidated through meticulous analysis and science. Yet, this experience dismantled my certainties, pushing me to question whether, at some point, death became more than a passive state and transformed into an active force with its own will. The concept was both frightening and intriguing, suggesting that the boundary between the living and the dead was more blurred than I had ever thought. The Boston Morgue, an advanced and well-equipped facility, had become the backdrop for an extraordinary mystery. The technologies typically employed to analyze remains and conduct autopsies with precision seemed inadequate to explain what was happening. As days went by, the disturbing footage collected revealed that the bodies were often positioned in ways that suggested intention, as if they were attempting to send a message or communicate. While some colleagues proposed that small mistakes might have occurred in the process or handling of the bodies, these theories began to seem far-fetched when faced with the overwhelming visual evidence. Each recorded movement exhibited an uncanny mechanical precision, an order that couldn't be dismissed as mere coincidence. Despite the administration's decision not to pursue a formal investigation, A palpable sense of unease permeated the staff, casting a shadow of confusion. Discussions of the incident became a regular occurrence during shifts, yet they were always tinged with resignation, as if acknowledging its existence brought an unspeakable fear to light. As my obsession with uncovering the phenomenon grew, I turned to libraries and online archives to seek out information on similar cases, diving into rituals and beliefs that implicated death in the arrangement of bodies. The extensive literature led me to ancient texts that described traditions wherein souls held the power to influence their surroundings post-mortem. Even though these ideas seemed steeped in mythology, the parallels to my experiences in the morgue were undeniable. The strain of searching for clear answers, combined with the persistent vision of the repositioned bodies, began to wear me down. Each night, I would mentally revisit the details of the experiences, seeking patterns or clues to unravel the enigma. The institute was enveloped in a tense silence, and I felt a pervasive sensation that something was lurking in the shadows, biding its time to reveal itself once more. An inexplicable event had transpired that night, shrouded in mystery. My diary became the sole witness to this experience, chronicling the transformation of the morgue into a stage for inexplicable occurrences and my growing anxiety each day as the bodies continued to change positions. Documenting these events offered me a refuge, a means of confronting my fears while grappling with a phenomenon that seemed beyond scientific understanding. Throughout those months, life at the Institute maintained an appearance of normalcy, with forensic processes continuing as usual to mask the tension that had taken root among us. Yet, whenever I found myself alone in the autopsy room, I couldn't shake the memory of the moving body in the shadows, a reminder that death might not signify the end of life, but the start of a mystery that refuses to be forgotten. The enigma within the Boston morgue left an indelible mark on me, one that years later remains difficult to articulate. The compelling evidence in the recordings defied rational explanation, compelling me to recognize that certain aspects of existence lie beyond the reach of forensic medicine. Each repositioned body served as a reminder that something beyond the ordinary and predictable was at play in that space. Eventually, over time, the Institute grew accustomed to the anomaly, allowing the investigation to fade into the recesses of my memory and that of my colleagues. The legend of the mysterious movements of the corpses passed down through generations, while authorities unsuccessfully sought explanations, leaving the enigma intact. Now, each time I step into the morgue, the memories of those bodies arranged in peculiar ways serve as a testament to the existence of forces in this world that defy human understanding. This narrative does not aim to provide conclusive answers but serves as a record of an experience beyond logic that perpetuates itself within every corner of the Boston morgue. It is a chronicle of an unforgettable ordeal marked by an enigma where death dared to shift reality.